All right, today I'm going to be doing a sunset from scratch so that I can show you how I record using Desmos. Desmos is a Google Chrome extension that you want to add. And if you have it installed, you can see I have some additional buttons over here. And so how do I use sliders to make the sunset happen? How do I use Desmos to record? So we're first going to start by making a circle. We're going to put it just up a little bit so that we can have it slide down. So x squared plus y squared equals 1 would make a circle. If we do y minus 10 squared, it's going to move it up a little bit so that we can have it slide down. We can make it a little bit bigger if we want. And then we have to use an inequality so that it fills in. And now we have our shape. I have some colors added up here, and you can see how colors are added. I actually am going to link just the colors in the description so that you can have those ready. And if you want to follow along, and then I'll also link the final graph at the end. So we can just make our sun. For now, I'm going to make it yellow, but I'm going to do something with that later. Okay, so we want to have a sunset happen. So we first want to start with some sky, and we'll just make it like a normal sky color. Okay. And then what we want to do is as the sun moves down, we want the sky to change colors. So first, how do we make the sun move down? We have to use a slider. Okay, so a slider is just a value that can slide up and down. And with this particular slider, we make it go to like 15. It's going to drop below the skyline as I play that slider. Okay. So then what I want to happen is as that happens, I want some pretty colors to fade in. So what I can do is I can I like to use I like to use like slightly sloped parabolas for the colors. Okay. And again, how do we fill in colors? We use inequalities. So if we say y is less than, right, then that's going to fill in below the parabola. And then I'm going to add on a little thing where it just says y is also greater than 0. So it just cuts off right where that skyline is. And then we can give this, well, let's give it like a nice pretty orange color. Okay. And maybe I'll move it down like a little bit. Okay. So then what I want is as like maybe when the sun passes about right there, I want the orange to start fading in. And we can see that's about when V equals 8, right? And then once the sun is fully down, maybe I want that to fade out. And that's like at V equals 12, right? So what I can do is I can go to the opacity of the color and I can make it so it depends on V. So just to show you how it works, let's say I make it like 0.1 V. Okay. So now when V is 0, there's no color, but then as V gets bigger, there's lots of color. Okay. So what I want to happen is around V equals 8, I want it fading in, and then at V equals like 12, I want it fading out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a different parabola definition where I'm going to say x minus 8 and x minus 12. Okay. And then I want to make it upside down, and I want to make it again like really kind of flat. So let's zoom in and see what this is. If we make this our expression, around V equals 10, it's going to peak at an opacity of 0.12, and then at 12, it's going to fade out completely, right? So I want this expression to be in terms of V. So I'll go negative 0.03, V minus 8, V minus 12, and that's what I'm going to plug in up here to my color. Where'd it go? Oh, it's here. Okay. All right. So now let's go back and look. Okay. So as V plays, right around V equals 8, we're going to start to see some color. And then right around V equals 12, that color is going to disappear, right? Okay. So then if we want to add, and you can tweak this a little bit if you don't, like let's say like right here, you want it to be a peak color. Okay, you can tweak this a little bit, right? Maybe that looks a little bit better, but you just mess with it and see what looks good for you. Okay. If you want to add another layer, we can just take our current layer, and then we can say, let's put a layer above that. Y is greater than that expression we came up with before. And then if we want to cut it off somewhere, we can then say y is less than, maybe we say like +5 or +6, right? And we can give this a different color. We can say maybe we want this to be like a nice pink, okay? And then if we want that to follow the same expression for when it fades in and out as orange, we can just copy that in, okay? So then now we can watch it play. We can see the color fade in and then fade out, right? Okay, so now here's the key. If we want this to look more realistic, we're going to have to create kind of a gradient effect. So let me show you how to do that with the sun first. So rather than making it less than 3, we're going to use a little list. We'll call this like L sun. Okay. And let's say we make L sun just 0 and 1. Okay. Well, watch when I add this. Okay. I have to turn this down a little bit so we can see the difference. You can see there's like 2 circles, right? So what we have here is we have a circle where 3 is the value, and then we have a circle where 4 is the value, right? If I add another value, it adds another circle. If I add another value, it adds another circle. Okay. So let's say I want to use like 5 overlap, or let's say 10 overlapping circles. Okay. So if I do 5, okay, again, now I have 5 overlapping circles. But if I change this 1 to a 0.5, it moves them closer together, right? And you can see now it's kind of harder to tell the difference, and it looks kind of like a gradient, okay? So what I like to do is I'm going to make the sun actually kind of more white, but I'm going to put like a light yellow layer on top of it, okay, to give it like a little bit of a glow, okay? So now we have our sun, and again with the gradient effect, and we can see down here. Let's turn the colors on. That happens about right here. Okay, if I add L sun here, it's also going to create a gradient effect. Okay, we might want to use a different list for the colors because we might want to spread them out differently. Okay, so maybe I'll say L. I'm just going to say L colors. Okay, so let's say we go 0, 0.25, and let's take that all the way to like 4. Okay, let's see how that looks. L colors. Okay, I'm gonna turn this one off for a sec. And then when you increase the overlap, then you have to crank down the transparency a little bit so that it looks more realistic. So that kind of looks like a nice glow, okay? And then if we're gonna use this, we're gonna have to shift up our other layer now because it's kind of affecting where the bottom layer ends when we add this list on. So I'm gonna shift this up a little bit just so it's out of the way. And then we're gonna do something similar with this one. So I'm actually gonna move this like up a lot real quick, just so we have some room to work with. And let's add L colors to this, see where that puts us. Okay. What do I have this one at? This one's at 0.005, so I'll go 0.005. Okay, that looks kind of nice. And then I probably want to do L colors on top as well, so that it's a gradient on top. Okay, and then now look at that. That's beautiful. Okay, so, and now you can see it's starting to lag a little bit. So it goes down. Okay, color fades in, color fades out. Okay, now we want a dark color to fade in now. So we can say, let's say Y is greater than 0. And maybe we want it to be like a nice dark blue, okay? And you can see these are fading out about V equals 12, right? So we want this to fade in at V equals 12. So if I do like 0.1 times V minus 12, now it's going to fade in. Maybe I make it like 0.05. Again, a lot of the times this is kind of a guess and check to see what ends up looking good. So now V passes 12, and maybe that doesn't get dark quite fast enough. So maybe we'll say try 0.1, try 0.2, try 0.3, 0.4, okay, 0.3. And I guess we can also, instead of doing that, we can have it actually start to fade in a little bit sooner so that we have dark fading in kind of as the colors are fading out. And again, this is kind of again, always kind of a guess and check situation. Maybe we want to put a little bit of a black layer on top of that to make it look more like a dark sky. But then we want this, again, we're going to kind of just mess with things until it starts to look good. Okay. And then maybe we think that looks like a good night sky. Okay. So then last thing is let's just add a little grass below just so we have more of a scene here. Okay. And then we can turn off the axes so that people don't realize it's a graphing calculator. All right. And now it looks more like a sky. Okay. Sun drops. Okay, cool. So then how do we record? So we're going to go to Desmos. And if we're just doing a single slider, it's a little bit easier. We're going to say our slider V, we want it to go from 0 to 15. Okay. This step is going to determine how fast the video is to some extent. So if we make it 0.25 versus 0.1, 0.1 is going to end up being a slightly slower video. We can just see what 0.25 ends up looking like. So we're going to capture this. Okay, and then now it's just taking a bunch of screenshots that's going to put together as a single video. And I'm going to go ahead and put the results at the end here once I'm done talking so you can see what it looks like as one smooth video. And then I'll link this graph into the description so that you can see this final graph yourself and mess with some of the pieces. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. I'm going to put some more tutorials out to teach you more about how to do math art.